guys, so today is a pretty exciting day because I literally just posted the video of me reviewing A Court of Thorns and Roses, and yesterday I also finished listening to A Court of Mist and Fury, so that is what we're going to be talking about today. I have a lot of thoughts, I have a lot of feelings, and mostly just pain and heartbreak and terror and excitement and extreme anxiety. So let's get started. I'm just gonna say from the get-go, this is a spoiler review discussion. If you're unsure of how you feel about A Court of Thorns and Roses and whether you should continue, yes. 1,000 times yes. I love this book. I haven't been this ecstatic about a book and about a series in a hot minute, and I loved this book. It was so good and so fun and so terrifying, but also so lovely and fun. I would say, even though the ending kind of crushed my soul, the rest of the book was just exciting and beautiful and just so good. Just so good. So if you need that push to read the second one because you're like, oh, I don't know, and it's 700 pages or 32 hours on Audible, do it. I don't think you'll regret it. Okay, so I love this book. Sorry, my hair, I just know is crazy today. It's so big. I loved this book. It's such a strange series because this book kind of nullifies virtually everything that happened in the first book. So you spend all this time in the first book thinking that Farah is falling in love with Tamlin and that she's willing to die for Tamlin. I mean, she does die for Tamlin. And it's like, JK, Tamlin's not that great. Everything is for Rhysand. Which on one level, I'm like, wow, that's such a strange bait and switch, but I think it actually is done really well. I didn't read these books, I listened to them. And so I was in the middle of this book while I was editing my Court of Thorns and Roses video, and it's like, wow, he really did set that up, because I even said in that video that I was into Rhysand. I like Rhysand a lot more. I thought he was more interesting. He brought a lot of oomph to the story. His scenes with her, giving her that tattoo, was the most interesting thing that happened in the book. And it's also interesting because everyone we met in the first book, which honestly was not that many people looking back, we have Lucian, who I still really like it, and I am so excited for the next book to see what he does. We'll get to him. And Alice, but other than Rhysand and Amarantha, we didn't really meet that many characters in the Spring Court. Partially they have this whole plot thing of Tamlin setting a glamour all over all the fairies that lived in his court so Farah wouldn't freak out and blah blah blah. But on a story level, that is just so genius of Sarah J. Maas to do, because now who are we attached to in the Spring Court? Pretty much only Alice, and even then only a little bit Tamlin and Lucian, where now we're introduced to all these new characters in the second book. Oh, we get to know way more of their backstory. They're much more fun and exciting and interesting, and sacrifice so much more, both for Farah and the Night Court and their secret city. And the way Tamlin and Lucian act in that first little bit that we're with them in the beginning, it also kind of helps solidify oh, Tamlin, you're being a little too controlling, you're being a little bit of a wreck. Lucian, you're being a little bit of a pussy. Farah's obviously struggling and y'all aren't doing anything. And so when Rhysand introduces him to his closest friends, and they're hilarious and very distinct, Cassian and Mor and Azriel, and what's going on between the three of them. There's clearly some weird love triangle, but not really, but they also genuinely really care about each other, and they're all best friends. Anyway, the point I was trying to make before I went off on this tangent was that this would be such a hard thing to sell to an editor. Hey, my first book, the relationship that happens and all that matters, but not really, because what really matters is what's going on in the second book, and that pretty much nullifies everything that happens in the first book. But it also does that would just be such a hard sell, but it does such a good job where the first book Something that I mentioned was how it felt kind of dull or boring because we're just trapped in like the same house. We're trapped in the spring court, but we don't really go anywhere. We don't get to meet a lot of new characters. And what this one does so well, I'm now like, oh, this was all on purpose. We're moving, we're changing, we're going to new places, we're going on new adventures, we're constantly meeting new threats and new characters and new people, experiencing this like really fun fairy nightlife. We're going to the summer court, meeting their high lord, going back into the human world. We're constantly traveling, and it just gives this story like such this momentum and fun. And it's like, of course Farah would love Rhysand compared to Tamlin, who, as she constantly mentions again and again and again, locked her up, wanted to take away her freedom, said he was doing it for her safety, but we all know it's more of like for a controlling thing. I just think it was so brilliantly executed when it comes to all those like adventures in the middle. My favorite one, or one of my favorite ones, was when she went and saw the Weaver. It just sounded creepy and horrible, but I was just so into it. Just this old, decrepit, disgusting old lady weaving what we eventually find out is like other people's hair and flesh together. And she's like a hoarder. So Farah has to go in and try to get Rhysand's ring for blah, 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 whatever plot purpose. And she has to do so without like making a noise. And then this like scary, creepy fairy comes after her. She has to break out of the chimney. Wow, what a riot. That was so fun. I was like, I hope this becomes a TV series, because that could just be like an episode and it would be such a tense but visually beautiful but also simultaneously disturbing. I've ever seen Howl's Moving Castle, and like his castle is just filled with all this like junk and knickknacks and like beautiful treasures. That's kind of how I was imagining the Weaver, but then also add this like disgusting element onto it. I also just really liked when they were hanging out in the city. I'm just gonna call it the Secret City. It's kind of the name of it is eluding me at the moment, but I also listened to it, and so it's harder for me to remember certain details. And just them like hanging out as a family, it was just really fun. And it's like, oh, let's go dancing, let's go to this restaurant and eat. How charming is that? It is so charming, which is obviously the purpose of scenes like that, to have these like moments of connection, and where it's like Farah's falling in love with them, therefore you're falling in love with them, so the ending can come in and just rip out your soul. I also wanted to mention that in my Court of Thorns and Roses review, I talked about how much I hate first person, which I still do. However, this book also kind of justifies a first person perspective a lot more, because she and Rhysand, due to her tattoo and also ultimately due to the fact that they're mates, have this bond between them where they can talk to each other through their minds. So you'll read, or I guess in my case I listened, but you'll have this like internal thought, and then Rhysand will actually respond to it. It's a very interesting way to have dialogue and for like the reader to be involved and kind of feel like a fourth wall has been broken a little bit. It definitely justifies the first person experience, but the ending, dude, I was like in my kitchen yesterday listening to this ending. I was like cooking food, yelling at Yukon. Oh my gosh, like having a panic attack because it was just so anxiety inducing. I almost didn't want to listen to it because I was just so scared. Even though it's just for plot purposes, like them having to get two halves of like some ancient scary book to bring to a cauldron. However, I like that those two halves of the book had the yin and yang thing going on and like really scary voices with them. The audiobook, 10 out of 10. That was so fun, and the voices she did for those books, talking to Farah and just being creepy and weird, was really, it gave me goosebumps a little bit. The King of Highburn coming in, taking Farah's sisters, which I was just like, God, and then throwing them into the cauldron, which I also was just like, God, and then they come out and they're now high fae, and I'm like, they're not dead. They get to live forever. They get to be high fae. They probably get to have cool powers. They also get to be beautiful and already have like incredible like strength and speed. It's like, don't get me wrong, I'm still having an anxiety attack because Asriel's dying, Cassian's dying. We don't know how these people are getting out of here. Tamlin and Lucian, turn them in? Oh my God, that like actually had me gasping. Like, you little bitch, you're gonna sell this lady out? Well, and honestly, I was a little bit more appalled with Lucian. I was just like, okay, I kind of already know Tamlin might be a little crazy, but Lucian, come on, my dude, my homie, why would you do that? And then when he realized that Farah's younger sister was his mate, what am I supposed to do with that information? Okay, but I love it, but it's, it was a lot. Point is, her sister's being turned into high fae. Farah was having this like insane emotional panic attack basically, and obviously I felt terrible for her. I'm sure if I was in that position I would also be freaking out, but at the same time it's like they're just getting turned into high fae. It's not like they're getting tortured in front of you. I mean, like, kind of, because it's being done against their will and they're forcing them into the cauldron with like a lot of brutality behind it. Like, it's not a fun experience. I wouldn't like necessarily wish that on someone, but like, now they get to live forever with you. That's kind of cool. That kind of works out. But Farah pretending to be under Rhysand's spell and that she's not actually in love with him or mated with him, and that like going back to Tamlin as a way to like trick them, as a way to get Rhysand and her friends to leave without notice, and then going back with Tamlin. I was just like, why is she doing that? Why is she doing that? Why is she doing that? And then them basically like spelling it out for me at the end, where it's like, oh, now that we know that the Spring Court and the bad guy are teamed up, she's now gets to be in their headquarters and is still going to report back to Rhysand. That is just so brilliant, and I was like, oh my god. But I'm also like, you're playing a very dangerous game, girl. You are like trying to trick this crazy, emotionally unstable person into thinking that you are in fact still in love with him when you very much are not. I don't know. Is it crazy that I'm not entirely anti-Tamlin? I'm obviously way more into her and Rhysand being together, because like, who wouldn't? But there's something about Tamlin where I'm just like, feel kind of bad for him. I feel like he kind of got the short end of the stick in this whole situation. I know they were trying to be like, no, Tamlin sucks because he kind of had a hand in killing Rhysand's mother and sister. And like, obviously that's not good. So it's like, oh, trying to show that he's not a good person. But I've also seen him clearly fall in love with Farah and like sacrifice things for her, not as much as Rhysand has sacrificed things for her. Point is, I'm just not anti-Tamlin entirely. I'm not rooting for his demise. Maybe that will change in the third book. Maybe like we'll see him become such a monster towards her. I'll be like, kill him. But even when he locked her in the house and would never let her leave and basically like caused her a lot of misery, he wasn't trying to do that to her. I don't know. We'll see. Point is, I want Tamlin and Rhysand to fight each other shirtless. So I love this book. I love this series. I'm so excited to read the third book. If I were to make some predictions, I should have done this with the first book, but you know, here we are, we're gonna do it. I would guess Farah gets pregnant when she and Rhysand got together. I would guess that now she's gonna find out like she's pregnant, she's behind enemy lines, and like she's probably not going to sleep with Tamlin. I'm actually very concerned on like how that's gonna play out, because like I don't think Rhysand's gonna be cool with her sleeping with him, even to be like convincing. She's probably gonna have to pull off like, oh, it's too emotionally traumatic, I need my space, blah blah blah. But then it's like, if she's pregnant, especially if she starts becoming visible, how is she gonna convince Tamlin? I don't know, but I would guess that would happen. And then also very interested to see how long she stays in the Spring Court. I hope it's not for the majority of the book, because again, something that makes the second one so magical is how much they're constantly traveling and moving around to different parts of the fairy world and the human world, to Hybern. That constant travel and sense of like a new place, I love that with stories. So if we go back to spending so much time in the Spring Court, especially in Tamlin's mansion, I get it, but I'm gonna be really sad. Unless they kind of did that for the last two chapters, where they switched POVs and had a chapter from Rhysand's point of view. So they do that in the third book and kind of switch between Farah and Rhysand's point of view. that could work maybe. They kind of set it up that Lucian's very suspicious of her, so I think he's going to be constantly trying to undermine her, but ultimately just to get to her younger sister. So he might even be willing to undermine Tamlin, which would rule. I think would really redeem Lucian, because I really like him as a character. I kind of hated seeing him be just Tamlin's lackey. Like, I get it, but I hate it. And I hope we don't see necessarily Tamlin's demise. I think it's interesting having him be where he is. He's doing bad things, but there's something about him that's very genuine, where it's like he really does just like love Farah and want Farah in his life. Like, it comes from a selfish place and not a healthy place, but whatever. I think that's still interesting. Also, with the high priestesses, I had a feeling that they were gonna be like seriously involved, but they really weren't. But I have a feeling in this third book, they're gonna cause some chaos. But yeah, I really love this book. I really love this series. I'm heading out to Hawaii in a few days, so I'm gonna listen to the third book during my trip. If you like these book reviews, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me out with the whole YouTube algorithm thing, as well as subscribing so you don't miss any of my content. I will still have videos posted while I'm in Hawaii, so you're not gonna miss anything. So you don't wanna miss out on any of those fun things planned. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.